glad you're all able to join us this morning for Theatech's weekly Technology Tuesday webinar series. For 6 weeks this summer, we're highlighting and featuring some future casting series that Fran Raybuck from Bentley Systems has set up and invited some of his futurists to talk to us about what's going on globally in the world and how to think 10, 20, 30 years out. Most of you know Fran through work with Theatech and our Smart Chips project. He's leading up our Element 4 area, and in a moment he will introduce our speaker today, Carol Rieg. And with that, Fran, let me turn it over to you.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm excited about today's presentation. I know Carol from working with her here at Bentley. And in speaking about the futures, there's nothing that's more prominent and more important, I think, than talking about the futures of our current generation of students and the education system and how we can work together in developing our workforce. Carol Rieg is our Corporate Foundation Officer at Bentley Systems, and the Bentley Systems Foundation is an organization for activities supporting and sustaining the community and the infrastructure profession. Formerly, Carol served as one of the founders and national director of the National Engineers Week Future City competition from 1992 through 2008. And she'll talk more today about the National Engineers Week Future City competition, what that entails and how that's actually grown and how Bentley participates and actually has gone international. In March of 2008, Carol was appointed to the Board of Directors of the Mid-Atlantic Federal Credit Union. Carol is also a board member of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. She continues to serve as a member of the City of Gaithersburg Board of Appeals after being appointed by Mayor Katz in 2004. Carol has extensive experience in the transportation planning and funding arenas and was appointed by Governor Ehrlich to serve as member of the Maryland Transportation Authority from 2005 to 2007. This includes the official launch of the Inter-County Connector, a $2.4 billion toll road in Maryland. Ms. Rieg holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and has worked for several business organizations, including PricewaterhouseCoopers. Most importantly, I think, is Carol will serve as the chair of the World Future Society Annual Conference for 2010, and the theme there is World Future 2010, Sustainable Futures, Strategies, and Technologies. Carol will talk more about that during her presentation. And with that, Carol, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Fran. And what a pleasure it is to be here today to share with you the information about Future City and STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, education initiatives, and moving forward with workforce development. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll use today, and I'm just going to go ahead and start advancing the slides. Here's a short outline of today's presentation. We've already covered the introduction, but I'm going to also talk about why model a city. And it's very interesting to see worldwide the migration of vast amounts of populations from the rural area into cities and what kind of impact that actually has on the city's infrastructure. I'd like to share with you just a brief overview of the Future City competition because it was really a program that was created way before its time, and now it's right here with us today. Some of our outcomes from Future City, and what are our current needs for the average student, especially here in the United States, to become involved with science, technology, engineering, and math curriculum. We're going to talk a little bit about strategic planning and future workforce development, and it's very interesting to see how academics, even at the school district level, how interested and how much needed it is now to get involved with the business community beyond asking the business community to buy them school supplies. We're talking about strategic planning. And then I'll finish up with the World Future City Annual Conference, our theme, and some of the highlights or previews of what's going to be happening there. This presentation does have active web links in this here, so feel free to click on the underlined portions and it'll take you to the reference that I'm citing. Job creation. It's pretty interesting to understand that a third of the jobs that will be available in 2015 have essentially not yet been invented. 2/3 of the jobs that will be available in the world by 2020 haven't been invented yet. So we're only talking 10 years out at this point. It's a pretty short future timeline. And the 21st century required job skills. Today's younger workers have a preference for sharing, staying connected, the instantaneity, the multitasking, assembling random information into patterns and using technology in new ways. They have already begun to challenge the established way of doing things in the business world. And if any one of our participants today know of a young person under the age of, let's say, 25 or even under the age of 30, I mean, really the best way to communicate is either through texting, Facebook, Twitters, tweets, to get that information out there. And this is something that we will have to incorporate into our day-to-day workforce. And what else is interesting is I just shared with you that the migration of people moving from the rural areas into the cities. Here's an example from China. China is planning to build 20 new major cities each year for the next 14 years. The ones it already has are growing by 13 to 15 million people annually. I mean, so I believe that would be equivalent to the size of New York City and continuing to grow. 300 million farmers will move from the countryside in the next 20 years, and even that is going to be workforce development for China. And this was from an article from Andrew Zolli in the Fast Company March 2007 issue. What does this all mean? Well, sprawl. Is Earth becoming a planet of super cities? And this is from an article that I had pulled off from Quantum Vision, or the Daily Galaxy, Great Discoveries channel. But it's pretty interesting to understand that 19 cities will have 20 million or more people, and that we have this now merging, the possible merging of metropolitan areas. So if you look at the, especially from my work with transportation in Los Angeles to San Diego, that is just one major area of population there. And that becomes this super city that puts the pressure on the infrastructure, whether it's your water or your energy systems or your transportation systems. We see a similar issue in a very slow way happening in Washington, D.C., for myself being a resident there for the past 25 years. The vast migration to initiate mass urbanization, and what does that require? Simply from a taxable standpoint, how will our municipalities actually be able to support this? Or in different parts of the world, how will the foreign governments be able to support that? And as you see that we have slum dwellers and the need for housing and sanitation, and I am familiar that I believe there's a place in New Delhi, and I've been to New Delhi twice, where there's 200,000 people living in an undesignated area, so technically that place of mass population doesn't even exist to the government, but there you have 200,000 people basically, living where they can, and a lot of times it's under the underpasses of the new roads they're building. Interesting. And what this impact is going to be on developing countries. As we look forward, there's your 10 super cities of the future: Tokyo, Mumbai, Mexico City, and more. And you can click on the link to find out more about that. And also what's interesting, too, is how to build a green city. So as we're looking forward, that Shanghai has actually taken on it's interesting, has taken on this effort to build a green city. And that is from, it's a short article from the IEEE Spectrum magazine there, and I think this whole call when China took on the Olympics last year, that it needed to be a green environment. So right outside of Shanghai, there's this push for this green city, and I encourage you to look at that, as well as this Welcome to Mastar City, and this is Abu Dhabi, a vision of sustainability. Another interesting case where the prince there has basically that form of government has is putting a lot of money into forming this carbon neutral city there and the research that will be involved. Interesting also because where it's based in, well, I guess right outside, it's the United Arab Emirates right outside of Saudi Arabia. So what does this all mean? Well, back in 1992, the Future City competition was launched, and I was actually one of the creators of the program. And in 1992, as I was starting my consulting business, I laughed that I had my state-of-the-art technology. I had a Mac Plus, with a hard drive. I don't know. It might have been eight. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even remember what the hard drive size was, but it was pretty small. It was probably you probably have more on your iPods these days, as well as a thermal fax machine, where after a while those faxes disappeared from the thermal paper. So you can imagine here we as we were putting together the Future City competition for the engineering community, we were looking towards the future and actually relying on our middle school students to tell us what the future was going to look like. So it was created as an engineering outreach program to introduce middle school students to science, technology, engineering, and math applications of concepts. So what we were able to have the students do is that through some connections in California through Chevron, this company that was just sort of getting off the ground, it was called Maxis, and they had this program called SimCity software. And we thought, well, wouldn't this be great to have the students create their cities of the future using this SimCity software? And I can remember having to spell that name, SimCity, over the phone several times working in getting this program launched there. Pretty exciting. And I have to say, too, not an engineer nor a teacher was in the room when we created this Future City. But we started off by starting off with the SimCity software Classic, and today the students use the SimCity 4 software, which has very good graphics and some interactive type involvement there. What's interesting also with the SimCity 4 software, which I'll share in a later slide too, is that the students are able to see the visual impact of the increased population and when the taxes go up, how the students react. They're able to see the connectivity of the infrastructure and their utilities and their power lines. They're asked to think about alternative transportation modes, alternative energy modes as they're building their city. And it's all done in a fun way. It's a game. It's a game to these students. And so we're teaching these high-level concepts in a middle school classroom environment. From that, the students are asked to build a city model of what their city would look like, and we ask them to keep it under $100 utilizing recycled materials so that they actually get to start seeing what their city would look like. Additionally, the students are asked to research and write an abstract of their city design and function. Just tell us a little bit more what it's about, and then an assigned essay topic on an engineering challenge that's usually the essay topic of usually some engineering topic of the year of the current time. But what's so interesting is that after they've put together, and the students work in teams of 3 or more, but there's 3 students that actually present and defend their city design and services before a panel of judges that could consist of engineers, architects, teachers, business people, venture capitalists, elected officials, and to say this is what we came up with on how this design of the city would be the best. So they're often defending their city design as if they were appearing with a concept plan before a city or a county council type planning commission. And they're ages 12 to 14. So they're very excited about their future and what their future city would look like. So just some of the short statistics here, the outreach of the program. It started in 1992 in 5 cities here in the U.S. Today, the program exists in 40 regions across the United States and 3 international pilots, those pilots being in Egypt, Sweden, and Japan. Additionally, a spin-off program from Bentley now, Future Cities India 2020, began in Delhi, India. And actually this year, 2009-2010, is the 4th year for Future Cities India 2020, where those students use the Bentley PowerDraft software to solve an engineering challenge within the city of Delhi or the surrounding area. Since the program started, 500,000 middle school students have been impacted by this presentation or by this competition, as well as the multitudes of teachers, engineers, judges, and parents. So it really is a collaborative effort and it's community-based, so there's that buy-in to say, hey, from the students, this is something that we'd like to live in. We'd like to actually live where we've grown up, and we'd like to see these changes happen. So it's really a phenomenal type of growth for this type of outreach there. I also have to mention too that this is all run by volunteers at the 40 regions, volunteers to the Future City competition. Many of the volunteers are engineers that have regular jobs, and they're senior project engineers, and then they go ahead and build their own volunteer community. And the Future City alumni, it's pretty interesting. I just wanted to share with you at least 2 of them. We have many of our students in the past have gone on to become civil engineers, mechanical engineers, patent attorneys, and also aeronautical engineers working on the space shuttle. And it was just the introduction of engineering being in a fun and interesting way. Right now, the Future City participation is 50% male and 50% female as far as students getting involved with the program. So here we have a picture of Dylan Goings. He's currently the CIO of Yoga Pro, and I believe he got his undergraduate degree from Carnegie Mellon. And we have also here Sheena Wiesner, who is a mechanical engineer with her degree from Duke University, and she's just finishing up her law degree from Harvard, and she will be a prosecutor patent attorney. Both
Hello?
SimCity, the use of the software, it's something that it was cutting-edge technology in 1992, and to go back and see the graphics that the students created in 1992 and see what they're able to create today is just phenomenal. That this competition just happened to be on the edge of that technology curve to keep going, but the concepts remained the same: design, model, write, and present. And as we can see here through the Journal of Planning, Education, and Research on that link, that professor, and let me see if I can just, well, we'll come back to that, but that it's actually the SimCity concept and programming is actually used at the college level to really help the students understand about planning concepts. So here we have 12 to 14-year-olds gathering up those concepts at an early age and seeing, especially when they're building their models, they're actually using calculus to build their model to scale, but it's not seen as this advanced class that they're sitting in. They're actually just doing it to get their project done and perhaps win a trip to space camp. And the students also learn through using the SimCity software that they learn about residential, industrial, and commercial zoning. I think one of the reasons that now Bentley Systems has been involved with the Future City competition since, I believe, 1995 at the regional level, and at the national level since 1999. So we have almost a 15-year involvement with the program, and the program is currently going on its 18th year. And I think one of the reasons is that this makes learning about these concepts fun, and that the average student is able to get the coursework that they need to say, hey, I have the ability, but perhaps they weren't tapped by their school administration to be in a gifted and talented program where they would automatically get these higher level courses. And as we'll see that, we need the students that are even the average students to help keep up with our global competitiveness and our innovation. The experiential learning, the experiential learning, as we all know, is that long after this competition is over, that the students continue to learn through the experiences that they had through this competition. So many times we've had alumni come back and say, you know, I was able to go back to my own city and question why. I remember this was in Louisiana, why a very small town, but why this very small town had 2 airports, and that the students really questioned the budget and, you know, and how we were able to support that. And apparently the genesis of the 2 airports had nothing to do with transportation, but was more of a local matter, if we could say that. And I guess both communities wanted their airport there, but the students were able to see that perhaps that wasn't the best use of planning concepts there. Especially now with our infrastructure, the whole rebuilding of America, our energy, the alternative energy, transportation, and the water systems there. So students are really able to say, what can I do to make a difference? And it's interesting, at this age, their future is bright. You know, they see the future as, you know, no holds barred. They're able to move forward. Let's see, we'll just... let's see here. I think I'll just take a break at this point. And Fran, do you have any questions or some comments?
Nicole, are you there? Do you have any questions from your side?
No, I don't. But if anyone has some, please type them in.
One of our previous sessions, we had talked about innovation, and Singapore was listed as the top innovation country, I guess. When you do the future city models, do you place any restrictions or any culture aspect, or do they just put a city anywhere on the map? What I'm thinking is, you know, an undeveloped region like China would be different than developing a city in Europe or the U.S. or anywhere else. So are there constraints that you put on the model building in any way?
Well, that's a very good question, Fran. The short answer is no. In fact, the students are very creative in developing their cities on different continents with a basis, let's say, in Africa, where that they're able to address the whole water issue and how the country will, some of the countries in Africa will deal with how they'll obtain water through these new futuristic, innovative methods that the students come up with or research about. They also place their cities in space, and that's pretty interesting in outer space. And of course, they really don't think much about how they're going to get all that material to their, you know, moon circling around Jupiter. But, you know, this is the future, so they're able to come up with some pretty good explanations on how that'll all happen. And so even in dealing with the whole space gravity issue, they deal with that, as well as they build their cities underneath the water too, and have some quote-unquote Atlantis-type cities. What was interesting is that the team that won in 2000, I believe it was 2005. If we had Katrina in 2004, it was the year immediately following that. It was from New Orleans, and even before, actually, they created their city. I'm trying to remember now. They actually created a city, and then it was they actually won, and then the Katrina hit New Orleans. But the students in New Orleans had actually created a city of the future where it was like a star shape, and they had 5 points going out. So in the event that a Category 4 hurricane or 5 hurricane would hit their city, that it was almost like that the boundaries would be hit first, but the core where all the people were living would be protected. And so it was kind of an eerie application that you would never think that you would have such devastation in the New Orleans or the whole Gulf Coast area, especially through Mississippi and Biloxi and the Gulf Coast there. But the students were able to push that forward there too. so that their imagination and their innovation goes far and wide. And it's interesting to hear that Singapore would have such innovation also, because Singapore certainly has terrific scores in the international math and science testing for their students. I think they're at the top or not close to the top with their efforts.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then just moving along, just to show you some of the different of the sample student essays from the Future City competition, that they're concepts that that they were asked to write about were definitely things that were current issues. So one was the efficient use of aggregate materials in transportation, and basically how could aggregates, your stone, sand, and gravel, be more effectively used in building transportation systems. And a transportation system didn't necessarily have to be a road. It could be a transit system. It could have been a waterway. And I thought you might be interested in reading that essay. The essays are only 500 to 700 words, so they're pretty quick snapshot there. Also, what was interesting, the closed water system that was developed by the team that based their city in Iceland, and that was an essay question that dealt specifically with that the residential unit needed to use a closed water system. And that was pretty interesting on how the students came up with things. This last one, this MaxSTAD, the use of nanotechnology in a city's water system. I can remember that particular question was generated basically to have nanotechnology used in some kind of the city's infrastructure system. And that question was generated before the Minnesota bridge collapse. However, the question itself occurred during that year, post the Minnesota bridge collapse, that academic school year. So we were interested to see if the students were going to write about bridge collapses, but really the top winning essay dealt with nanotechnology and how to have the use of nanotechnology in the city's control system, city's control system for the water system to help help alleviate the bacteria and pathogens that were going to be harmful. All from very young minds there. So looking forward, basically the program itself is encouraging and inviting professionals to become involved with Future City. What's unique, not unique about Future City, but as the team, we have our team of 3 students and you have your teachers. It's open to both public and private parochial schools as well as homeschools students. But one of the key elements is to have an engineer mentor or a professional mentor work with the team side by side. And it's very much of an intergenerational experience there, where even, and we, certainly if you were a relative, all the better, if it was a father or a mother or a grandparent that wanted to serve as the mentor also in that professional capacity. And what was interesting is that it was intergenerational, that the students didn't know that certain concepts couldn't be done. And the mentor can say, that's a great idea, but let's look at some of the applications of these high-level math concepts. But because the professional was using them in a day-to-day application, the communication effort became almost seamless there. And so the mentor is also seen as part of the team member there, so that the engineers and other professionals mentors to guide the students through the Future City creation process. Professionals also can get involved as steering committee members. That, as we all know, that it takes this whole volunteer effort to launch this program, and it is teamwork to get involved with all these different buy-ins of the community there. So whether it's your government or your industry or your school districts there, but that it takes different skill sets to launch this type of program. It is a 4-part competition, so the judging alone over the different parts does require more than just a one-day science fair, let's put it that way, which also has its benefits too. Developing the essay challenge question and related resources, because we wanted to see that this essay question became a reality for the students, but it was also interesting too to have many different people on the call or on the development team for the essay question, because yeah, that's really great for a PhDer to figure out, but we're talking about 12 to 14-year-olds too, and then the teachers in the classroom, which we'll talk a little bit about too, and what they're struggling against too. So making it a challenging question, but with the requirements being at a very simple level there too. Judges for the regional and national competitions. And sometimes people just have one day or can do it virtually also for different parts of the competitions, and it's just so exciting to see the students come and sell their futuristic ideas to whoever will listen to them basically. And then the keynote speakers for the regional and the national competitions. And at the national level, we've had such keynote speakers of, that one of the developers came out and talked about how SimCity 4 was actually created. It was one of the developers from Electronic Arts. And, it was just so cool to see all that stuff being shown on the screen for the students there. That's exciting. Or even at the regional level also, some noted engineers to talk about it. I believe at the Las Vegas competition, Future City competition, just the whole building of the Hoover Dam bypass there, and having the project lead for that particular project, and I believe it was a female engineer from HDR, coming and talking to the kids and saying, just outside here, this is what I'm working on. This is exciting. So it really is a wonderful opportunity to learn more about each other's professions, and really just to provide that opportunity to learn more. And as we can see here, the return on the investment are student, teachers, mentors, parents, and industry. More than ever now, this return on investment is critical, I believe, to the future of our, not only our U.S. economy, but our global economy. So here's a couple links to a couple of articles. The 10 years and a noted milestone, if you get a moment, that's with the Arizona Future City competition and what they've done, as well as IEEE was the lead organization that helped launch Future City, and here's their role and their involvement and basically why they continue to stay committed. And as we can see here in the photo, here's Greg Bentley, the CEO of Bentley, presenting the first place prize last year to the team from Bexley, Ohio, that won for Nova Modem, which was their city based in Iceland there. And the students actually get a trip to Space Camp, U.S. Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama, which includes the 3 students, the teacher, and the engineer. And it really is a prize that students are excited about and the possibility of winning. As part of their prize also, which Bentley helps to sponsor, is the trip to Washington, D.C., where students compete against the other, let's say, 39 teams that are there to go for the top prize. But they also get 4 or 5 days in Washington, D.C., Granted, it's in February, so there's not any cherry blossoms out. Sometimes we have 28 inches of snow, but we still continue on there. But it's a wonderful opportunity for other students to learn from other students about what they're doing with their cities of the future and how they're actually using their math and science in a practical way. So just quickly, this particular slide, it's that Future City is a part of the solution, providing the opportunity for students to explore engineering and technology-based careers. And recently, the 2009 winners that I just shared with you from Ohio, they were actually featured on NewsHour and PBS in April 2009, and that's an active link to the video. Additionally, last year, which was the 3rd year for the Future Cities India 2020 program, where the students, high school students, use the Bentley PowerDraft software, they actually use the software to redesign the New Delhi train station. There are 300,000 people that go through the New Delhi train station every day. So if you can imagine the volume of movement there, whether it's with the trains or the mass of humanity. And that train station is state-of-the-art 1948. So it was so incredible what the students came up with this idea that they were called by the head of planning and the Railroad Commission. And the Railroad Commission in India is a very powerful and important agency there. And the students' ideas were actually put on display as here's part of the solution, and apparently they've been working on it for 14 years. So in 5 months, the students came up with ways to redesign the New Delhi train station and also the arterial roads feeding into this train station too, as well as, I guess, the actual trains themselves. So here's a couple of articles also on catching them young from Geospatial Today and Active Link, as well as, you know, the winning Future Cities India 2020, and what I found as being the national director, whether I met the students from Japan, I saw the pictures from Egypt, I spoke with them when I was over in India and spoke with the students from India, their vision for the future was the same. They wanted a better life through better engineering infrastructure, not only for themselves, but for generations to come. And I just found that to be so amazing that every one of them wanted the same thing. Okay, and then just one more slide here. You can see some of the pictures of the students. So I invite more companies, nonprofits, trade groups to become involved with regional and national, international programs. And this can be done through volunteer resources, financial support, and professional services. And even Voice of America has captured a Future City team as they envision a new green world. So here's a concept that was basically developed in 1992 and going on 18 years. It's still at the top there as far as a viable program. Okay, I'm just going to take a break. Are there any other questions on Future City, Fran, or any other comments you'd like to make?
First I'll ask Nicole, do you have any in the queue there?
I do not. We have a quiet group today.
Yeah, just sort of a comment. One of the statistics I've seen recently that just in India, the top 25% of their students is equal to the sum of all the students in the U.S. So it's a staggering number, and you know, when you start to look at bodies and count brain power, even if we ramp up and take all of our students and get them interested in STEM, it seems like we're way behind. So this is a real challenge, I think, just when you talk numbers. And I think it probably points to a bigger future trend related to you know, human power being blind to globalization, I guess, going forward. I'd be interested, some of the other countries that are trialing it, you talked about Greece and Egypt and others. Why are they interested, and what are they doing, and how are they approaching it?
Well, it's interesting. The Egypt connection came through an IEEE connection, and it's basically, here's a program that is low cost because it basically, you build the model out of recycled materials, and that's a universal thought there around the world. As well as the SimCity software is a very popular game. And so it was actually an IEEE graduate student that said, let's launch this program and get the Ministry of Science and Technology involved I think it was in Alexandria, Egypt, because they were building a new library at that time. So that was sort of the genesis, and we can use this program as a demonstration project. So it's unique to the community. It's interesting, in Sweden, it was actually with the HVAC, the American Society, but it's called SwedeVac, of the heating, air conditioning, and heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning engineers. And it's tied now back, it's still a very active program, tied back to the water industry there in Sweden. Once again, taking that concept and making an application. In Japan, the program Future City actually came from one of our teachers in Arizona and took it as a project as part of a teacher exchange program with the Japanese government called the Fulbright Memorial Fund. And this is a program that was started after World War II by the Japanese government to bring the American teachers over to help the Japanese education system and school teachers rebuild their education system there and to go forward. And once again, it was this ability for the students to say, it was a forum for them to say, this is what I want to see our future look like using math and science applications. So it's interesting to see three different entities, how they got involved there. And for India, it's self-explanatory through the Bentley connection there too. So the need for the average student in STEM involvement. Very, very critical and very much more now in the news on a regular basis and with funding behind it, that actually an acronym has been coined called STEM, called Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And often confused with stem cell research, involving medical use, but this STEM I'm referring to is what I've referred to. And that all future careers will require our workforce to use some element of STEM in their day-to-day work. Whether you're a healthcare professional working in IT, education, manufacturing, our green jobs, will all require our workforce to have an understanding and the ability for the application of science, technology, engineering, and math. And what's also interesting, too, in getting the average student involved is that the parents need to get involved, because the parents may have only gone to school 20 years ago, and in that short 20-year time, so much has changed with technology, even from 1992 forward. And as I shared with you at the beginning of this slide presentation here of the webinar, that even in the next 5 to 10 years, our workforce skill set is going to change dramatically. So these core understanding needs to be rooted in our workforce and in our education system to carry out these jobs themselves, the economic indicators there. So there actually is now this cry for education and STEM focus, and that we may hear we need to get back to the basics there. Certainly we need to have a very literate population, but we need to have a literate population now on science, technology, engineering, and math. Recently, the Carnegie Corporation report came out in June 2009 called The Opportunity Equation, where the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, stood up before a crowd of about 400 people at the museum down in Washington, D.C., saying, hey, we need to get to our teachers right now for our students to say that we need to have math and science education as a top priority for our students and how it's going to affect our citizenship and the global economy, which I think is a significant report, and that's an active link there. But, in short, during the very short synopsis there is that we need to have better teachers in the classroom teaching our students about these subject matters here. So there's a cry for educating the teachers about and then last year it was actually a report, a 2-year later report. The first report was released in 2006, but Rising Above the Gathering Storm. And that was called by Congress, and Norm Augenstein, the retired CEO from Lockheed Martin, led that effort there that involved not only congressional support, but professional support, especially from the National Academy of Engineering, on how is our workforce, how are we going to deal with the retiring engineers now that we have? Because really this push for, this call for engineering, I mean, there's a whole discussion about Sputnik, and so once there was a man, that there was this call in the 1960s by President Kennedy, we are going to put a man on the moon before this decade was over, which indeed it happened, and we celebrated 40 years later this past July. But that whole call to get students involved in math and science, to get them excited again, because there was that goal, putting that man on the moon, Neil Armstrong. And so how can we reinvigorate, what's going to be our focal point? So there's this big call for, we need another Sputnik at this point, and to call again. And so Rising Above the Gathering Storm, that happened again in April 2008. And it was very interesting because Dr. Charles Vest, the president of the National Academy of Engineering now, but former president of MIT, he said it very plainly. He goes, what have we done in the last 2 years? And I just happened to be there. And, it's nothing. We haven't moved forward on this call for action here. And the audience was primarily higher education, our universities and colleges. And so once again, that we need to come together and address this issue head on. And then just some demonstrations of why we need to do this. There's the Engineering Grand Challenges, an active link. And these grand challenges are around the world, but one of the number one grand challenge is water, and that as one of our our senior VPs, Buddy Cleveland, has in his blog, that water indeed may be the next oil there for the growth of populations and humanity and economic prosperity. So I invite you to look at the Engineering Grand Challenges, and with that, taking those grand challenges is an innovation video called Imagine It Squared, or number 2, and basically going back to how to get the parents involved, how to get this engineering challenge or the STEM issue involved, and why it's so important and why it needs to happen now. So so join the conversation about how imagination and creativity can make the world a better place. So to show that these subject matters are exciting STEM issues. And that's an active link also. It's also interesting that the National Governors Association incorporating STEM now in K through 12. Once again, a call to action here that STEM, that here's just a communications toolkit. Let's get out there and start talking to our states there about this. And what's interesting, the STEM Center of Excellence, I happened to be at a meeting last week with interested individuals hosted by National Governors Association, from the White House, from the Department of Education, from other foundation efforts, from other people from industry, to say, what can we do now as a collaborative effort sitting around the table? And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, through the National Governors Association, provided $3 million 2 years ago that was allocated in $500,000 grants to 6 different states, one of them being Pennsylvania. And if you go to the STEM Center of Excellence, you can certainly see the rest of the states there, one being Ohio, one being Hawaii, Minnesota, and 2 other states. But was really to come up with a 2-year project plan on best practices, so then we could pull this all together. Pennsylvania was the outreach into the different school districts there and the student application. The Ohio was teacher training. Hawaii happened to be I believe the robotics competition. Virginia happened to be the post-high school education, but getting them ready for college. And the old terminology was the VOTEC, that link there, or that link through the community colleges, and looking at the 2+2+2 program. So students in high school, their last 2 years, are already immediately exposed to a 2-year high school program where they're doing a corporate internship. Through that, then they graduate from high school. They go to community college with the corporate support, perhaps paying for it, and then they finish their at least their undergraduate degree while still working for the corporation. So that's a program that's out there too. Lots of creative ideas pulling it together. Also with the B Careers Network, we have B Careers and blended learning. And what is blended learning? It's being able to have our software in a classroom setting, may not even be an engineering classroom setting, to help students learn now. As you learn these engineering concepts, here's some engineering software, architectural software, data management software that is going to help pull it together here. So that when you graduate from college, that you already have your hands-on experience that you learn through the classroom, sort of an internship within the classroom itself. And that it's interesting that the MicroStation use our Bentley product and the PISA scores. PISA scores is an international ranking of students of how well they do in math and science, and that's an interesting program out of Austria where high school geometry students used a program called LCAD, which is basically electronic learning through CAD, computer-assisted drawing, and that it was a formal study that was done, how that the actual student scores were expected to go up 50 PISA points, and they actually went up 300 PISA points, which was a significant growth there. Also, it's kind of interesting that one of the Department of Ed top officials that was at the National Governors Association meeting last week made the comment to say, we need to have our math concepts come alive. Just seeing rote formulas on a board isn't exciting enough for the students. How can we make them come alive? So I certainly was able to share with him this whole issue with the PISA scores and the geometry classes mentioned there.
Say, Carol.
Future work, yeah.
Oh, sorry. That kind of has a nice segue for one of the questions that's come in.
Okay.
Someone wants to know how can we compete for students' attention with the video games that we're competing with?
Yes, well, that's a great question. I think that if the video games need to be incorporated into the school curriculum, and that's one of the beauties of the SimCity software, that it wasn't seen as an engineering program. It was just seen as a fun way that you could spend time in school there. So working with perhaps some of the video game producers to say, to ask them to be part of this collaborative effort also.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, sure. Looking at tomorrow's jobs, I just have a few slides left here. We can see, and this is from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and the chart on the right, you can click on tomorrow's jobs and get the whole article there, but you can see where the percentage change is going to go down, and this is relatively within the same time frame we were talking about at the beginning of this presentation, 5 to 10 years out. But the production and farming are definitely going to decrease, and we're going to see that. I think this is just based in the United States, but even worldwide, how there's going to be a decrease in those matters, and that everything else, the professional and related in your service industries, are going to go up. So it's going to be your health and IT, that's going to be your engineering professional services, as well as then the business to help manage all these projects that are going on and construction. So that there's actually going to be this increase, and this increase is going to be related to actually the whole STEM issue there. And I wanted to bring up too this Generation X, if I can find the notes here. Okay, well, I'll have to have you click on that link there. But Alexandra Levitt is a Wall Street Journal syndicated columnist, and she just brings it up from her own perspective, which I believe the Generation Xers are 25 to 35-year-olds there. Oh, here we go here. But who will, looking at, our workforce that we have right now in the Generation X, who will be working with the team base there, and what will be working for. The construction project may indeed be a construction project that's going on over in China, but the team of design engineers may be based in India, or they may be based in the United States at this point. And just the whole communication effort. Some now, even as we in our day-to-day lives, we work virtually with a person that we don't ever actually meet face-to-face. We may do it through a webcam, but that actual physical contact may never indeed happen, but you're still working on the project together. So that's an interesting, I encourage you to look for that there, as well as that Education Secretary Arne Duncan, once again, calling business leaders to help push through school reforms, and that goes back to that whole Carnegie report and the education opportunity equation. It's interesting also that the U.S. Department of Education has $4.5 billion available now for these types of race to the top innovation projects. And for me personally, that's the first time I've ever seen that kind of money interest in this whole discussion topic here. Let me just finish up here. I just have just a few more points here, but the strategic planning and workforce development, and that in working with business and working with schools and working with the engineering population, it's a new kind of collaboration, and that the planning has to happen from both ends at this point. We need to plan out 10 years out, but we also need to say, what do we need right now in order to get to that 10 years out there? So it has to be a very interactive model that's going on there. So I encourage you to look at that. Ray Kurzweil, who's actually going to be a speaker at the World Future Society Conference in 2010, just a short video there on his advice to college students in technology, and he asked the students to have their passion, and how do you create that passion, or how do you create the environment for that passion? And I do believe that Future City presents part of that also. But it was interesting in that video, he talks about how Google was just basically created in a college dorm room by college students, and so some of our strategic planning is done in those college dorm rooms, if you can believe that. Also to the 21st century classroom for future of workforce schools there, the White House, once again, this call for STEM. And this global competitiveness with the STEM educated workforce, now there is social etiquette and how to do social networking for small business, which we certainly here in the United States see that as the backbone of our economy in the years to come. Was there a question? Okay.
Now I think we got 1 or 2 minutes to wrap up here, Karen.
Okay. So I'll put my plug in here for the World Future Society 2010 conference. I've been honored to be selected as the conference chair, and it'll be held in Boston, July 8th through the 10th. As I mentioned, we will have Ray Kurzweil as one of the keynote speakers, and who's a noted futurist, if you're not familiar with who Ray is, and that if you just click on the graphic there, that'll take you to an active link for the program.
Great.
And
go ahead, Nicole.
I've been getting a few inquiries. We will be, we have recorded this webinar, and we'll be putting it on the fiatech.org website, and also getting a copy of the presentation, because I think we're going to need that, Carol, for to ensure that the web links are live.
Sure. I'll be glad to.
I think in the recording it's probably going to flatten those links. So if I could get a separate copy and we'll post both up there, then folks can go through this at their leisure and download and look at some of the documents you've referenced.
Okay, great.
But other than that, Fran, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Hey, Carol, just sort of one other question. I've noticed from computer companies recently, for example, IBM, a lot of their commercials now are emphasizing, like, I'm a math person. It's not I'm a computer person, it's math. And there's less emphasis on just computing for computing's sake, or computer science, I guess. Are you seeing that as a trend, a shift towards, the basic skill sets, and computers either are just coming naturally?
I think it's both, Fran. From myself who's worked in the STEM issue, we worked in STEM before we knew it was STEM with Future City, that this drill back down to the basics, math and science, and the application of those concepts to create, the technology and engineering is critical. And for large business through their external marketing messages is critical. We're all feeling that, okay, we can't just do our own thing anymore. We've actually got to collaborate. And isn't this great? We have Facebook and all these other tweets and Twitter to have these collaboration tools that have come together. So it's interesting there. And then what was your second question?
Just the emphasis on math, computing companies.
Yeah, right. That honestly, the workforce just isn't coming out fast enough from our colleges, and that companies are competing for 10 companies could be competing for one person to do the best of the best of what they need to get done there, where perhaps in the past what's happening is that the top minds are actually retiring, or they're retiring but then they're asked to come back because they still need to get the critical work done. They still need their mindset. So the retirement age for the engineers may be, and the mathematicians and the scientists may be pushed out, and maybe they'll be working as a consultant with their retirement still intact. But they still need to work no matter what. So it's a great need at this point.
Well, great. Well, Carol, thank you for your presentation, and I would encourage everybody to especially download the one with the links, and there's a wealth of information going through those links that Carol has meticulously sprinkled throughout the whole presentation. And if you want more information for your company or even yourself in getting involved somewhat in the in this next generation of students or STEM programs or the World Future Society or the Future Cities work, Carol will have her contact information on the site there or on the presentation, so you can get in contact with her directly. And I would also encourage, she had mentioned Ray Kurzweil. If you don't know who Ray Kurzweil is, you can look up his book, which I would recommend reading, The Coming Singularity. Great speaker, and just he, as the keynote speaker, is worth it alone, I would think, to consider attending the World Future 2010 conference. It's a great conference if you haven't attended it. I've attended it and are a member, and in fact, Carol was helpful in getting Tim Mack, who is the president of the World Future Society, to speak at our last session here for our future Splash into the Future casting. And our next speaker will be Kurt Yeager from the Galvin Electricity Initiative, and he'll be talking about a lot of the things related to smart grids and how he's involved in his book called Perfect Power. So we have that next on the agenda, and then we have our final speaker, Tim Mack. So with that, Nicole, I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up, and thank you everyone for attending here.
I think that's it. Thanks, everyone. We'll get that up later this week on our website at fiatech.org. Have a great day.